for coming. So we've got a pretty awesome dais here. You guys can just shimmy on up here, get in there, and then we've got one more. There he is. Hey, buddy. Thanks. Awesome. Great. So, I mean, obviously, everybody knows you need to work with the right partners, and so we do have an amazing dais here of people who are active in all areas of the space, acquisition, retention, monetization. So I'm also going to try as best as I can to follow Dan McLaughlin's advice on speed panels. So we're going to be skipping the intro section. I'm just going to throw a slide up here. There you go. Here's who we're talking to. So maybe just quick one-liner on what each of your companies do for the audience, starting with you, Mike.
Yeah. So Iron Horse. Hello. Iron Horse Games is like a game publisher, except I'm not the publisher of record. The developers stay the publisher of record, so I help teams improve their retention and monetization, hopefully get featured, and also provide some light funding and marketing sources as well.
Hi, I'm David. So DC Games Consulting is similar to Iron Horse Games, in which I work with developers and publishers worldwide to help with improving game retention, monetization, business development, and so forth in order to maximize revenues.
Hey everyone, my name is Martin Price. I run product for Vungle. What we do is we help we work on both the advertiser and the publisher side to help people acquire high-value users with engaging video ads, and on the publisher side, obviously, support with monetization.
Hey guys, my name is Samir, and I basically manage the publisher development at InMobi. Representing InMobi, we are a 10-plus-year-old company. We're a global monetization platform when it comes to basically making money for the publishers, at the same time, really getting the ROI for the advertisers. So that's what we do.
Hi, my name is Andre. I'm with Acquired.io. We provide SaaS for app-focused advertisers to manage their user acquisition. We actually just launched today, so we're early.
Nice. I was actually most excited to hear what you did because I signed up for the newsletter. I had no idea what Acquired.io did. So
yeah,
awesome.
We provide basically a dashboard to run and manage all of the channels in the performance-driven fashion for advertisers who are focused on apps.
Awesome. So yeah, we're just going to kind of cover, this is the monetize, acquire, and retention track. So we're going to dive into each topic. I want to encourage anybody to ask questions at any given point in time. We're not going to do a long QA session, but just feel free to dive in and treat this as a free flow discussion. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and pulled some fun little quotes that I'm hoping can kind of frame our discussion. So we all know that user acquisition is expensive and terrifying for large teams, particularly up against retention rates being what they are. User acquisition is a very, very dangerous world. So I guess, what are the main, higher level, what are some of the main things developers, small and large, need to look at when they're selecting their partners to begin with, or even making the decision to engage in user acquisition? On the product, David, you do a lot of consulting. What's your advice to developers who are considering user acquisition?
Well, I think when you first start making the game, you should know if this is a type of game that you can actually do user acquisition or not. If it has the right theme, right color palette, right monetization strategy to have high LTV. If it doesn't have a lot of monetization in it, and it's caters to a niche audience with a niche look, then it'll be hard to do proper user acquisition at scale, just because the CPI is going to be much, much harder. So, right from the beginning, that should be something you should more or less know before you start developing the game, or as you're developing the game before you launch.
What are some of the best practices you've seen in terms of making a game appropriate for user acquisition?
This is something that Mike and I learned when we were at Congregate. Bright and more colorful, vibrant color palette helps, just because it's better for ads, lowers the CPIs, increases conversion rates and click-through rates and so forth. The theme and the genre. So if you're making a game that's a very niche theme, like a sci-fi game. Sci-fi users are very hardcore, but they're also a subset of the general population. So if you want a game that appeals to a wider audience, you can hopefully have lower CPIs, then you need to keep in mind that both the theme and the genre are mass market, or at least have a large addressable audience.
Martin, what are you guys doing on the product side? Once a developer has signed up, for a user acquisition campaign, what are you guys doing on the product side to bring the best results you can for the developer?
Yes, that's a great question. Obviously we recommend using video. That's, I think everyone now across the industry that's one of the best ways to kind of promote your game. I think one of the things we do is a lot of work on our side to actually slice, dice, and build different versions of that creative and put that creative into different templates. So that's where we try and add value on the product side. So if you followed anything about Vungle, we've been in the press a little more than usual this year with a few product announcements. One was around GDC, around our dynamic templates product. And what that does is take in, let's say you've created a game, you have a couple of promo videos you stitch together, and you want to go do user acquisition. What we can do is take that video and actually put it into 20 different templates of all different layouts. And depending on the aspect ratio of the video, that they will look different, obviously, but they're responsive. They fit really nicely into different positions in other partners' games that work with us on the SDK side. And what we do is we tune those to help drive acquisition at a lower price point. So on the product side, we're trying to kind of help on that piece.
And that sounds really great. With so many varieties, how much of a budget or how much traffic is required to really start drilling into the statistical significance of something like that? In terms of if a developer is considering a UA campaign through Vungle, how much are they going to have to spend to be able to make informed decisions based on all these creative varieties?
Yeah, so that's something we're actively trying to actually improve on our side, right? So today, obviously, you can come in, and we'd recommend the highest budget possible. And we have folks in the team that will happily come talk to you about that in more detail. I think on the product side, actually, we want to democratize it. We're going into new markets. We opened our Singapore office last year. We're doing a lot in Southeast Asia. We're going to Latin America in an aggressive way. So we actually want to bring down that price point. Vungle's always been known as a very premium network. We're actually building out more tools and more products, like our templates actually, that means we don't have to do a lot of creative work, and actually it's just on the fly we spin out these multivariants. So we think we can bring that cost down.
Yep.
I think folks on the panel could maybe give a bit more structured input into what that kind of budget size is, but for us, we used to have a kind of limited budget below we thought we couldn't really help. We're trying to actually lower that bar now to help scale the platform.
I have a question. So, and David can attest to this, one of the things that we do often when we do icon testing for games, or even doing creative testing where you have 5 different variants, is they're wildly different from each other. You want to cast kind of the broadest spectrum in terms of the art and the approach and the composition, the color palette that you're using. You're never really sure what's going to work from a marketing perspective. So when you guys are generating video ad creatives, you're generating off of one base file. Are you guys creating anything new? Like a brand new, entirely different video as well? Because dealing with decay, especially when it comes to marketing creative, I've seen rotations every 2 weeks, every week, if you have the budget to do it. So how do you guys kind of counter that? Because even slight variations aren't going to produce, at least in my experience, a really pronounced difference. I don't mean to put you on the spot, sorry.
No, that's great. I think that's great feedback for everyone. But yeah, so we do that today. We create different cuts, right? We play with duration. We play with different edits, right? So what we do is we can take, we're working with a partner on something at the moment. We've taken a whole bunch of assets, literally, 45 minutes or an hour of different footage, and we'll slice together different versions of variants and do that. I think, how we keep building that at scale is where it gets really interesting.
Is there a minimum budget to get that 45 minutes?
For 45 minutes worth of video broken out, I don't think I should commit to that.
Well, speaking on budgets, Samir, I wanted to ask you this because you guys are a large company all over the world. What are for anybody considering user acquisition, what are some of the base level business management questions they should be asking their partners? That's obviously required budgets, payment terms, things like that. So just at a quick higher level, what are some of the things that a developer needs to know, and where do they have the most wiggle room?
Sure. See, our perspective, Mobi has been in business. We have 19 global offices, right? So the global angle really comes into the picture here. Now, depending on small size budgets or large size budgets or global, user acquisition strategies here. See, of course, we do have some minimum number of, minimum level of budgets that we would recommend, basically, to make sure that, the efforts being spent for the ROI for the small advertiser who really wants to promote their games, etc. is aligned. But I think for us as a company, the reach and the experience that we've spent, for 10 plus years in industry, right? Especially video as the focus or angle on basically, the learnings that the platform has actually had in the last 10 years with the level of targeting capabilities, with the reach, with the LTV values that we can actually bring in, with the richness in the platform, right? So that's really has to be aligned in terms of what the needs of the developers are, whether this is basically a game or it could be any kind of advertiser that we bring in market.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, more like I'm looking more for tactics that will help developers. So like, I guess like to what degree should they be targeting certain regions, or how often are they going to have to pay you for those users? How much wiggle room do you have on CPIs for those users? I mean, this is more like the industry as a whole. Like when somebody gets into user acquisition, it's not just a simple matter of here's $5, get me one user. There's a whole host of business considerations to take on, and I think for a lot of smaller developers, it's completely outside their wheelhouse. So, what specifically, like if there's a checklist that you could take to every single partner you're considering, what would you see on that checklist?
See, we definitely help and promote, as you said, there are small developers who want to really come and promote, right? So, it's not that we ignore them, right? We on their behalves, we basically kind of like offered them stitching some sort of creatives for them at times, making sure that there's enough richness of these units which we're bringing in. Again, aligning in what markets they need to be in, or we actually go back and recommend, guys, that these are the markets that where we've seen real growth, and we can actually recommend, how we can help and partner you guys in scaling in these markets, right? Gone are the days like, getting an incentivized solution is like, you can have thousands of installations day one, right? The objective is not that. The objective is basically LTV, the quality of users that we bring in, the cohorts or the targeting capability that we build into our system to make sure that, okay, this is the genre, this is the new app, and these are the markets that we would recommend, where we as a company can actually help and grow them.
Cool. Well, Andre, last question on user acquisition for you, Andre. Your platform allows developers to manage a whole bunch of partners, which obviously you tend to need. What's your recommendation for developers in terms of how many partners they should be working with?
Yeah, I think like regards user acquisition as any other activity, I think that should be like thought as something that has definitive goals in like timeline and other aspects of where you actually want to do that, right? Because like if you have your target geographies and countries that you need to release the game and you have certain budget, I think based on those inputs, you got to define like your channel acquisition budget for like how many dollars you can allocate to try new things and which like bigger partners are you going to pick. So I think it really depends on the size of the company and actual game. But currently, what I'm seeing on the market, it's different all the way from like 5 platforms to 300 platforms different advertisers work with, and like channel acquisition budgets range from like 10 to 25,000 per channel. So it's like big enough for network to try with, and still meaningful statistically for the game you're trying to market.
Cool. All right. Let's move on to retention. So, retention, I'm going to probably focus a little bit more on Mike and David, because this tends to be less a product thing and more a consultative approach. But, what can developers do when they're selecting their partners to prepare themselves for potential impact on retention? So I'm thinking, if you see an ad that's maybe like mature content or something like that, what do you tend to recommend developers do to avoid working with partners that could potentially have a negative impact on retention?
So the thing that I usually focus on with retention, and especially as it relates to putting other people's ads in your game, is you shouldn't really worry about putting other game developers' ads in your game. You shouldn't, right? What you should be worrying about is maximizing the engagement with the ads that you put in the game. That should be your focus. I think falling back to this position where you get scared or frightened that user's going to leave your game for another game, guess what? It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen really rapidly depending on the genre of game you've chosen. So I would be focusing more on maximizing the advertising integrations that you have in your game, as opposed to trying to get a curated list of partners that you potentially integrate from an advertising perspective. I also think that, as David said at the start, when you start thinking about advertising and you start thinking about retention, like a lot of the numbers that are going to come as the end result of your product's development are going to be a result of the art style that you've chosen, but also the genre. Like your KPIs specifically around retention are going to be a reflection of the genre that you chose, right? Idle games, for instance, retain leaps and bounds better than a card battle game. And runners retain extremely poorly in relation to those two. So having some kind of sense of how your genre is going to retain allows you to get into live operations, not freak out when you see bad KPIs. Best way to do that is just talk to other developers about the KPIs that they're seeing on their game. Usually they're really forthcoming, especially if you return the favor and tell them the kind of stats you're seeing on your game.
Well, I guess one, when it comes to ads and retention, there's some developers and publishers that are afraid of cannibalization, so they do blacklist certain games or advertisers when they serve ads. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is, segmenting the audience to show certain ads to only certain people. That can be both good and bad, because some players might complain that they might not be seeing ads and may not be able to earn the rewards that they want to. But I think what Mike said, most importantly, if your game is good and he has strong retention, then it shouldn't be that big of a fear. If your retention isn't as strong, or you're seeing a particular game or company doing a lot of ads in your game, that means they're seeing good results from their ads in your game, and that could or could not have an impact on your retention. But it could also be increasing your ad revenue, because they're paying much higher CPMs because they want those impressions.
In that case, you should reach out to that company directly and see if you can strike a deal with them. So if they're buying all your ad inventory in the first place, they probably want to talk to you.
Yeah, you have to make sure that the ad part, or the ad, if you're using a mediation platform, that the mediation platform SDK supports direct deals, so you can actually serve those, and then negotiate a good rate there too, because they also take a cut there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dive in there, Martin.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing as well. If you talk to partners, one of the things we've been building to kind of help with this is a feature we call placements, right? So a number of our competitors support this as well. But in order to segment your users, what you can do is set up different placements with different price floors, and that can lead into your monetization strategy. So you might be like, hey, I don't want to show ads to these users because they're doing good in-app purchases in my game, right? And I want to cultivate them, and I don't want to show them as many ads, and that's fair enough. But there might be a price point. What we find out when we talk to some of our larger publishers, that they will show it provided they could get a particularly high price for them, because they know they play other games, and that's quite normal, right? So they will show, say, a rewarded placement at a very high price point to specific groups of users, but they want someone on the kind of monetization side to help them hit those really high CPMs, and that's typically where we come in.
And let's get into the monetization stuff, and that's really the meat and potatoes of it. What I was really hoping to frame with this quote is that it's a hyper-competitive industry, both for developers producing content and for us on the monetization side, hyper competitive. And at the end of the day, I think one of probably the blockers that we've all faced in terms of getting business or anything like that is a constraint on time. So what can we do to better protect the time of our customers and our clients? And what can developers look for somebody that is going to ensure that their time isn't wasted? And that's open for anyone.
So again, see, Chris, the first thing that comes to mind when it comes to global monetization for partners is, again, depending on the size of the publisher, depending on basically the audience and the reach that they have, is the first choice is depending on what kind of mediation services they're using. It becomes really complicated when there are large-scale global publishers who are doing rewarded video. I have this partner, because they have native, they have banners, they have everything, right? Supersonic is a partner for this thing. So that choice that we really need to be advocates to the publisher how we can help. So first thing is a platform's capability to actually help these global partners with the reach and relationship with all these exchanges and SSPs. That's critical. Second thing is, as Martin has been saying, the panel says that the focus is all on video, right? With the infrastructure and changes coming up, with the sharpness in the technology that that platforms have in their the secret sauce and the SDK, etc. Right? Any and every publisher would talk about they have too many SDKs. What's the choice? What's the cost of opportunity, etc. Right? So we need to be smart enough and basically again guiding them if there is a space of 3 SDKs or 4 SDKs, who goes out, I come in. It's not that, basically, right? So we really need to guide them. And then I see that the needs are so global for these large publishers, right? There's always a thin line. Should I put my competitors at? At the end of the day, a publisher has to make sure that he's making enough of ad revenue dollars to justify running the business, basically, right? So we've been working with a lot of global partners with the video needs. For instance, some would say, in China I would like gaming advertisers on my properties, but I wouldn't do that in North America, some other properties, right? So it's a mix and match of so many of these things. But at the end of the day, you have to make a call. The CROs of the companies are always interested in making sure they're retaining, they're basically doing enough to monetize. At the same time, they're not messing up with the user experience, right? So the richness of all comes together to make sure that you really help the customer to take the next steps.
Okay. Mike, you want to add to that?
Yeah. So on the other side of the equation is small and medium-sized developers, right? And their experience, and it's been my experience in the last years, looks something very similar to this. Before launch, you go out on Touch Arcade and tell everybody, hey, we got this cool game, check it out. Ad partners start reaching out, and they give you the worst offer on the planet. Like, oh, we're going to give you like a $2 eCPM floor for your US users. Isn't that great? No, it's not great, right? And you don't know because the game's not out, you don't know how ad performance and your eCPMs are looking like and who's going to be buying your traffic, so what your ultimate eCPM is going to be. So ultimately, lots of developers get freaked out and they say, well, I've already integrated Unity ads, I'm going to stick with that, we're going to launch with Unity, and there's not going to be any competition in the waterfall, right? So nobody's going to compete against each other for fill rate. Then the game comes out, lots of titles, especially if they pick up an audience on Touch Arcade, get featured. That's when ad folks get super interested, right? And it's the worst time to get interested, and it's the worst time to make any changes in your game. Because you're going to negotiate hard with all of you guys, and you guys at that point are fair, right? Everyone at that point more or less is fair. But everyone's offering a great eCPM for your users. If they're not also following that up with a guaranteed fill rate, it's not worth anything, because they could give you a $100 eCPM for your US users and give you a 1% fill rate. So who gives a shit? Right? There's going to be no fill. They're not going to pay out. They just get the first slot when they want it. When they don't, they don't. The reality of the situation is you need a waterfall in when you go out for launch, and you need to be in a position where you're telling these partners, I'm going to be hearing bids from you when I get a feature on this date, and this is the decision. This is when the decision is going to come through on which partner I'm using. Best bids are in by this time. That's the way you have to handle that situation. And it feels weird, especially as a developer, because you're always preparing for defeat. But in this scenario, especially if you have any indication at all from other publishers reaching out to your games or asking about it, usually they think it can get featured. If it can get featured, it gets traffic. If it gets traffic, these guys are going to want it. So put yourself in a position where you can negotiate those deals quickly and do it before the first weekend, right? Because Thursday, Friday, Saturday, peak, and then drop off after that. So you're going to see your traffic drop off and the potential ad revenue drop off as well.
One thing I want to add to that is that, like Mike said, that first week after you launch and if you get featured, that's the worst week for you, because all the ad networks are going to be contacting you, but you also have to deal with all the issues that come with launching a game. So 2 things I would recommend to allow you for more flexibility. One is integrating a mediation partner, just because then you can have multiple ad networks in there, and then they can, basically fight it out to see who can provide the most value to you and your game. And what you have to want to consider there is, if you're building a game in Unity, you can pretty much go with anyone. But if you're not building a game in Unity, if you're building a game in Air, in Cocos 2D, then there are technical considerations to take into account there, because not every single mediation SDK and app SDK supports, Air or Cocos 2D and so forth.
And I think also too, like looking at the history of those plugins, because a lot of companies might have an Adobe plugin lying around, but like what version of Vungel's SDK is in there or something like that. So definitely something to check as well. We're running close to low on time, so I wanted to sort of, as a sort of a closing thought, I heard a couple chuckles when we mentioned that, come feature week, you guys are all going to get a lot of emails. I think nobody here is a stranger to a flooded inbox. And that creates a bit of impression, let's say, on people in our line of work. And I think that can only be overcome by us collectively becoming more sincere and working with integrity. So I guess as like a wish list item? Like, what would you like to see us as partners do? And this could go to everybody, but what can we change in the industry from our vantage point to come forward as more sincere and with more integrity? I'm going to start with you, Andre.
Yeah, I think in general the space is like super fragmented, and like there are just a lot of parties that are doing different things. Some of them are doing same things, and maybe in general there will be just more alignment with end user interest within like the whole infrastructure of that.
Okay, Samir.
So see, what we would recommend here is that there's so much of, if the networks and the platforms, especially taking video as such a powerful tool to reach out, with basically the message to the end user, making sure we are getting the ROI. Viewability is extremely important, and InMobi as a company has really taken a stance on viewability and the fraudulent measures, basically, right? So we would encourage the industry to work together to make sure that we are actually chasing that to the goose, and making sure that we're really getting what the advertiser really needs. And just one point that I want to add was basically we as a company have a very healthy mix of brand dollars gelled with the performance space. There's always a secret sauce for a platform and a network, right? When they do the arbitrage of converting, making sure the CPMs are actually met. So we are growing with the viewability efforts and the fraudulent measurement efforts, and making sure that there's a very decent mix of video with brand dollars, those powers really coming to those audience in the segments, not to say that this is pub A versus B, this is gaming versus non-gaming, right? So I think this is what we really think should be taken as an initiative together.
All right, Martin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think just quickly on the acquisition side, I work with a partner who can optimize to the ROAS target you want to hit, right? So you're not spending money on something you can't back out. And like there's a number of us who will help and sit down and really try and work towards your goal, not our goal, right? And I think a little bit similar on the publisher side, right? I think about the user experience. I think, what size ads, what type of good rewarded experience. There's great feedback in the industry from users around rewarded video. So build in good placements for rewarded video that fit well, but then work with the partner who won't just give you the minimum for that ad impression. I thought that was a great comment. So one thing we've always done, and we still do today, is we don't buy at a small percentage below our floor. If the bids come in and you convert and you drive users at a higher price, we'll give you that money, and you've earned that money, right? We're not going to cut you off at a set CPM price, right? So I would try and work with partners in the ad space that will also kind of work towards helping you against that goal, because those are then aligned perfectly to help you make the most money from your title.
Great. We're really running low on time, so quick one-liner.
Well, I would say building transparency and trust, because you want to have long-term partners, just not someone who's going to get in and get out and cash out.
Money. Give developers money. And be transparent. Be transparent about your margins as well. I think when you start looking at the user acquisition business, if developers had the type of margins that you guys had, there'd be a lot of rich developers. So thinking about how your margins look in relation to how much a developer is going to make, and thinking about the fact that a developer can ship a game best once a year, like a quality game once a year, and you guys are getting integrations on a much more regular basis. Being more forthcoming with that money and providing a recognition of the value that a game is generating installs for your business would be really helpful in terms of integrations. Because otherwise, it's very hard to differentiate between all the different ad products out there. One way you can do it easily is just say, here's a check for lots of money. You should do that.
Yeah, money is good. Kind of goes against my quote there, Mike, but cool. Well, thanks for letting us run long. I apologize about that. Any questions from the audience on any of this? Oh, we got another 5 minutes. All right. Well, I didn't plan for that. What's new? What are you guys playing? Actually, I meant to ask that. What are you guys playing? What are you playing right now on your phone?
I'm just checking a bunch of new stuff, but not playing regularly.
Samir, you?
Zynga.
Nice. Martin, what are you playing?
I'm playing everything.
400 apps.
Yeah, at the moment.
Yeah, David, you?
I guess I play a lot of games, but also mostly the new Supercell game, Brawl Stars, and then Everwing, which is a Facebook instant game.
Mike?
I play a lot of ugly games. So games with really bad art and bad production values, but great game design. I think those often get overlooked because there's not the level of polish like Brawl Stars have. But the game design principles, a lot of the experimentation within genres is happening in the ugly games, and it gets overlooked. So play more ugly games.
All right, sweet. Well, myself, I'm playing a little bit of Trailer Park Boys. Shout out to the Vancouver studio Eastside. Okay, well, my wish list item, one thing that would be really great in the industry if we could do this, well, one, we could stop sending emails. We could stop using email completely. That would be a nice thing. So I think people would have a much better appreciation for the line of work that we're in if that was the case. I'm not sure what the replacement is. Maybe we go to somebody's door or smoke signals or something, who knows. But one thing I'd really like to see happen, and I think this comes down to companies like Vungle and Mobi allowing this, is more campaign control. That's the #1 complaint I hear from developers. They have zero transparency into what's being served to whom. I mean, there is segmentation to a certain extent, but I mean, have you ever tried to disable a machine zone ad? Like, you can download the game, you're still going to see 100 mobile strike ads per session. So, like, what can we look at to opening up, creating more transparency at the campaign level for developers? That would be my #1 thing. That, and I think people should start using 15-second video ads more, rather than the full 30. I know it kind of messes with the economy a little bit, but like, why
Want to
not?
get to the end card? Is that?
Yeah. Just get right to it. Okay, audience questions. It's kind of dark here.
Can you speak to like an average eCPM of like top 200 game?
Yeah, well, it depends on the country, but US, you shouldn't be making much less than like a 15 or maybe even upwards of $18 or $20 eCPM for a rewarded video in the US. Other tier 1 markets like Germany, France, certain Scandinavian countries probably dip a little bit lower than that. You should be able to get a deal in Feature Week for much higher, $25, $28 eCPM on rewarded video if you time it right. On our platform, it's upwards of that. We've seen really good performance in China and Japan as well. I was talking with, who was it? What was the game again? Oil Wars 2 or something like that by Phil, what's his name? Anyway, they had a game. They were doing like $73 eCPM in China. I wouldn't budget on that, but yeah, you should. Apparently it happened. I'm sure it was completely organic, natural, no fraud involved whatsoever. Yeah, click-through rates of like 80%. Yeah.
Well, yeah, in China, we often see eCPMs higher or much higher than the US, just because, Chinese games monetize very aggressively and have much higher LTVs than Western games in general, especially if they're like MMORPGs, SLGs, and so forth. So they can spend much more on acquiring users. And also, there's less inventory in China, so that's why if you have a game that has a decent size audience in China, it can drive a decent amount of revenue as well.
Yeah.
It's worth noting those eCPMs are for iOS. Android is substantially less.
Yeah, that's all iOS. Android drops off. Probably like between like 70 to 80% of iOS's performance.
More or less.
Typically. Any other questions? You? No? No one? All right. Well, thanks guys. Appreciate it, and thanks all for coming.